I'm Jade Starr. I'm a teacher. About a year and a half ago, a few of us got together and said, wouldn't it be great to, I don't know, kind of celebrate intellectualism? We really like these things called TED Talks, and we're like, hey, maybe we could do our own version of that. Maybe we could, I don't know, eventually get kids to do things like that. And so last year, at about this time, Mr. Walker and I said we're going to go ahead and go first. We're going to see how this happens. And we honestly expected we'd have about 30 kids and didn't know how it would go. Well, we had more than that. And then we continued on and we did 4 more idea talks, all with crowds like this. 3 of them done, or 2 of them done by students. And it has just become something absolutely awesome. And today, we kick off our 2016-17 school year with our first idea talk with the amazing and wonderful, the stud of the world. Anything to add, Mr. Walker?
Nope, I just wanted to say I really appreciate being a part of this from the beginning, and I thank all of you for coming out and supporting intellectualism and these talks, and for the remainder of this year we have some other students lined up as well, so please be looking out for it. Thank you all for coming.
And keep it going, keep the crowds flowing. We really love it. This is what learning is all about, right? This is really what it's about. So without further ado, the Paul Stieber giving us a talk today on the dynamic nature.
Thanks for being here. You have a task in front of you, and what I'd like you to do is with a pen or a pencil, I'd like you to complete that sentence start and then send it this way. Send it this way. Now, those of you who've had me in class, you know what I'm up to already because you've seen something like this before. So, just keep it secret for now. All right. Well, as Mr. Starr said, I'm Paul Stieber, and I teach English here to 11th graders, and I teach what we officially call English language development, which you might know as English as a second language, to students in our school whose first language is something other than English. And today, I'm here to talk about why language and our brain's capacity to produce it and our natural instinct to use it, why I believe it's the most distinctive and the most marvelous feature of Homo sapiens. It's my hope that when we finish in about 20 minutes or so, that you're going to leave here thinking more, just a little bit more metacognitively, about the way you think, about the way you speak. And it's my hope that you'll also appreciate language and the wonder of language in a new and different way. But before we get there, actually, we're talking about human language, and I need to start actually with a human story to provide some context for how I've gotten to this place. And so bear with me as I tell a short story. I was born in Michigan, in Detroit, and I lived there my whole life until I moved to Oregon as a 26-year-old in 1998. And I began first consciously thinking about language at around the age of 6 or 7. And very strangely, that happened as a result of my mom and my dad. Now, here I am at around age 6. That's me in the wonderful, sort of like Paul McCartney bowl cut, circa 1964. My 2 brothers, Patrick above me and Brad beneath me. And here I am at about age 13 or 14, like leaving 8th grade. That's my dad, right next to me. And I got to thinking about language between these two ages, in large part, actually I should say, only because of my mom and dad. Every winter in Michigan, from about those ages, like first grade to about 8th grade, my parents would cobble together all of their vacation time, and they would take a 3-week winter holiday in Acapulco, Mexico. It's important to say that my parents did not spend their Acapulco vacation in what I would call Acapulco for white people. In fact, they rejected the part of the city with the Hard Rock cafes and the McDonald's and the Hiltons and the Marriotts, and instead, my very lily white parents, with only high school diplomas and not a single day of Spanish between them, would go to what I'll call real Acapulco. And that was the part of Acapulco where Spanish instead of English was dominant. The part of Acapulco that Mexicans from Monterrey or Guadalajara or DF would come to and spend their own winter holidays. They'd come back to Detroit all bronzed and rested. My brothers and I had generally spent the 3 weeks raising hell with our grandmother. And they would come back with great gifts for us. I distinctly remember this shark's tooth pendant that I got one year. Another year I got a nice stuffed snake. Like super gifts. But really the most important gift they gave me was something that was completely not tangible. And it was this. It was their stories about their trip that I remember the most. And their stories were about trying to navigate like this world of Acapulco without any English whatsoever, without any Spanish whatsoever. They would try to negotiate transactions, of course, and meeting people and traveling to different parts around the city or just outside of Acapulco. Somehow, without much Spanish at all, my parents met and befriended, and they were befriended by Mexicans. They were, in fact, invited to these Mexicans' homes. And their hosts would find some way with my mom and dad to like cross the vast chasm of communication that was between them.
Ms. Coritello, will you please call the front office? Ms. Coritello, dial 0.
They would communicate essentially in what little English that the Mexicans knew and what little Spanish my mom and dad had. Well, maybe I was impressionable, and maybe I was naive, but as I heard these stories, and even now as an adult, as I reflect upon them, like as a kid, I somehow, for some reason, like really began to understand that language is how language can bridge like the vast divides that separate us in the world. And by the time I was on the cusp of high school, at the end of their regular trips to Acapulco, I'd essentially decided that language was the most powerful force on earth. And I was particularly, of course, like keenly interested in Spanish because that's what my mom and dad, that's where my mom and dad would travel. And like I set out essentially, you know, as a 14-year-old boy, intent on learning Spanish. And that was more than 30 years ago. And why I'd say now that from my experience I would call love the most powerful force on earth, I still think that language is right there next to it. It is still incredibly powerful. And it's interesting now that I am a big kid and I'm an adult, that I work with language every day as I try to help students make sense of English. It's wonderful, it's demanding, it's dynamic work, and I want to tell you about 4 reasons why I consider it so dynamic and so really inherent to who we are as people. First of all, Language is unique to us, and this is something that makes it particularly special, I think. It's only we, Homo sapiens, that have this ability to speak. And you might quickly say, Mr. Stieber, but honeybees communicate, and we know that cetaceans, like dolphins and whales, communicate. And we know that dogs can communicate, and certain types of birds, of course. But communication is not the same as language. It's only humankind that can do the following. We can invent new words. Think about it, how many words that, particularly you as teenagers, really invent. Only humankind can have words with more than one meaning, and I'll come to that in a moment. We can talk about the abstract with language. Dogs can't. We string together sounds to create meaning. We arrange words into an infinite number of ideas and combinations. Very quickly, about our words having more than one meaning. This is something, again, distinctly unique to us, and this is what makes language different than mere communication. I want to take the word canal as my example and tell a short anecdote about my daughter who recently turned 4. Now, people are laughing because I've shared this anecdote in class before, and I can't escape the anecdote. It is a powerful anecdote, and here it comes. In the spring of this year, my daughter, Kate, came home from daycare humming a song that I knew. She had learned at daycare the Pete Seeger song called Erie Canal. And it goes something along these lines. I got a mule and her name is Sal, 15 miles on the Erie Canal. And it goes on and on. So, Kate didn't know the words, but I heard the song and the tune, and I immediately pulled out our Bruce Springsteen Seeger Sessions CD and put it in the computer, and damn it, we learned that song. Like, Jack, my son, learned it. Kate learned it, and we would sing and we would dance to the song. It's a great song. We found ourselves, Kate and I, a few weeks later, reading a bedtime book. And the book is called On the Day You Were Born. And it's a great children's book. And it really tells the story about how the world is waiting for the arrival of a child. And, the green sea turtles, they tell the garden warblers, and the whales tell, the great blue herons that you're coming. The moon is waiting for you, the wind, the tides. Well, at the end of this book, just as the child is about to be born, there's a line that says this. And you slipped out of the darkness into light, which is metaphorical, right? Kate stopped me and said, Daddy, where did I slip out of? Well, you can appreciate that that's a loaded question, right? And as a parent, you have an important choice to make. What do I say? And how much do I say? Well, in my house, we believe in words. And so I just plowed right forward and I told her. And I said to Kate, well, Kate, you grew in your mama's uterus. We don't use the word belly because that's silly nonsense. You grew in your mama's uterus, and when you were ready to be born, you went from the uterus and you slipped down into the birth canal. And then I took another deep breath, really. And then from the birth canal, you came out your mama's vagina. Well, Kate puzzled over that, and she looked at me, and she moved her lips and wrinkled her brow and said, canal. Like this, Daddy? I got a mule south, 15 miles on the... Man, that is amazing. That's a reason. We are different. We have language, and that example, I hope, illustrates for you that we are unique. in terms of our ability to use words. Sometimes those combination of words can be silly. Dmitri Borgman, who's an author, writes this sentence: "I don't know where family doctors acquired allegedly perplexing handwriting, but nevertheless extraordinary pharmaceutical intellectuality, counterbalancing indecipherability, transcendentalizes intercommunications, incomprehensibleness." Now, only we could produce something like that, and I share it here because if you pay close attention, each word has one more word than the previous word. One word. 1 letter, 2 letters, 3 letters, 4 letters, I meant letters, obviously, 5 letters, 6, and so on and so forth. In language, again, it's unique to us. Read rhymes with lead. Red rhymes with lead. But red and lead don't rhyme, and neither do read and lead. A Groucho Marxism. One morning I shot an elephant in my pajamas. How we got into my pajamas, I'll never know. Piece that apart. A second reason that language is so dynamic and is that it's constantly evolving. In fact, the English our ancestors spoke is hardly recognizable. Not hardly. It's not recognizable to us today. And I'll get to this Old English in just a moment. English has been around for about 1,500 years, and back in its original form, like around this time, around the years 500 to about 1100. Think about the time when Beowulf might have been orally told around a campfire. It's undergone profound changes in sound, syntax, spelling. And here's an example. I want everybody to take a look at this for a moment, even though it's incomprehensible to us, and see if you can make any sense of it. This is Old English. We all, like our ancestors, spoke this. Now, English changes over time, or it changed over time, and we're still in the process of change. I suspect that in 500 years from now, the English that's spoken will be different than what we speak today. Just as Middle English, from about 1100 to 1500, looked different than Old English. Now, here's the same text in Middle English. And I want you to see if you can make any more sense of this. And I'm hearing some people get it. What is this? It's the Lord's Prayer. And here we have modern English, starting from around 1500 to today. Language changes. And why does it change? Well, in part because of migration patterns, partly because we, as people, we come into contact with other people who speak different languages. It changes because, particularly today, because of technology. Just a few examples, of course. You, as teenagers, actually are part of this equation. Young people are partly responsible for language change because of the amount of interacting that you do with other young people. And you create new words. I mean, back in the day before even I was born, like my parents' generation would have created groovy, for example. Groovy's died off, essentially. We don't use groovy very frequently today. But we do use other words. I want you to think about, for example, well, let's take sleighs. If we didn't have language change, we wouldn't be able to say, for example, Beyonce slays. My son wouldn't come home from school last year as a first grader saying something like, "For reals, Dad? For reals?" Goodness gracious. So we have young people, and you, teenagers, and your role in the language change process to thank for phrases such as those, and others. And the word I want to look at particularly today is the word swag. All right? Now, real popular common word today. I still, to be honest, I only have a loose grasp on how to use swag. And the truth is I shouldn't probably use it because I'm a 40-something and it just doesn't sound right coming from my lips. But this excerpt is from a consideration about the word swag from the New York Times from 2 years ago. And I want to just look at it with you and comment on the diversity of the word. As a noun, we can use swag. Check out my swag, yo. I walk like a ball player. We can use it as a verb. I smash this verse and I swing and surf. That's from Lil Wayne. We can use it as an adjective. I got you slipping on my swag juice, says Mark Eminem. And even an interjection we can use it as. Say hello to falsetto in 3, 2, swag, says Justin Bieber. Swag refers to some sense of confidence. It refers to a sense of style. But the truth is, swag has been around forever. We've simply, I should say you, young people, have just rediscovered it, okay? Its use goes all the way back to Shakespeare, who has given us about 1,700 words that we use in our language. And Shakespeare used this through Puck and A Midsummer Night's Dream. What hempen homespuns have we swaggering here, so near the cradle of the fairy queen? Words come back to life, and you, like teenagers, help give them life. A third reason that language is so dynamic and human is that it is for this reason. We speak very frequently in metaphor. And in fact, we use about one metaphor for every 10 to 25 words that we speak. Our brain actually is, has a conceptual system that allows us to think in metaphor. And I want to look at a couple of examples here. A lot of these examples are words that we know well. Think about the metaphors embedded here. The war on terror, axis of evil, he's a pig. You know, metaphor being the substitute, really, Trump's use of the election is rigged, this notion of the sailboat and moving the sails, is pure metaphor. But, so is Clinton's use of the basket of deplorables. It's metaphor, and we use it naturally. You even use metaphor naturally. Love is loving someone more than you could ever love yourself. Love is a battlefield. Happiness is a purring kitten. Love is ignorance. Love is when someone makes you smile. Love is unconditional, unassailable happiness that can achieve endless things. Look, there's a metaphor embedded in that metaphor. You, all of us, think in metaphor. The last assertion I'd like to make about language today is that language, and particularly language is dynamic because our ability to use it makes us smarter, actually. And I'm speaking mostly of learning a second language. That makes us smarter people. And I want to share with you a short commercial about just that. Learn another language, ladies and gentlemen. Language is dynamic because it makes us smarter, particularly when we learn a second language. Of course, I'm talking about those of us here, many of us, most of us I hope, are in a Spanish class or a German class. And I encourage you, just as a quick public service announcement, when you leave here and graduate and go to university, don't stop with your second language studies. You've already put in so much time, for goodness sakes. Don't get to college and quit. What a waste. Please don't. Beyond this humorous video, there are real cognitive and intellectual benefits to learning a second language. Very quickly. Language learning, second language learning, correlates with higher academic achievement in standardized tests, like the ACT and the SAT. It correlates, when you learn a language in high school, with higher academic performance in college. Language learning, as a young person like you, or as an adult like me, can help you avoid cognitive decline in old age. Some of the more recent research shows that bilinguals who come down with dementia and Alzheimer's do it about 4.5 years later than monolinguals. These claims, they've been tested via research and studies, but as I finish today, I want to offer a final reason for learning a second language or a third language. It leads to a more dynamic life. And there are many of you here today who already speak two languages. Some of you speak German and English. Some of you speak Vietnamese and English. Some of you speak, obviously, Spanish and English fluently, perfectly, beautifully. And if you do that, you're actually living, and I know I'm speaking metaphorically, you're living between two different worlds. But it's true. To be bilingual is a way to understand and to see the world through two different prisms. In my own life, in my decision as a young person to study Spanish, a seed that resulted from my parents' trips to Acapulco as a boy, my own life has been transformed as a result of me learning Spanish. We'll see if I delay Alzheimer's. But I've traveled to Spanish-speaking countries, and I've made lasting, lifelong friends with people around the world, and very importantly, I felt humbled and more human as a result of learning a language in addition to English. And for me, that humbleness and that humanness, that's more important than any of that stuff. And so my wish for you today, as we end and you walk back out into the cold and into the wet, is that you're able to marvel, just for a little bit, at our innate instinct for language and how it makes us human. Thanks for listening and being here today.
And one of our traditions here is to recognize our speakers publicly. And so this was something you probably have all seen. Mr. Stieber signed it, and we'll be adding it to our list back there behind Ms. LaRue. If you're interested in doing an idea talk, go to WHSidea.info, submit a proposal. The committee will bring you in and have a conversation. Thank you, Mr. Stieber. And one last plug. During Wolverine Hour, we will be having periodic, not the idea talks, but idea discussions, where we watch a TED Talk, or we watch an idea talk and we have a discussion about it. So keep your eyes and ears open for those. Can we put one more round of applause for Mr. Stieber?